She had perfected the art of being invisible. Every morning, Maya walked through the school hallways with her head down, earbuds in, watching her worn sneakers carry her from class to class. She wasn't shy exactly, more like careful. In a school of 800 students all fighting to be noticed, she'd found safety in the shadows. Most days, Maya ate lunch in the library. Not because she didn't have friends, she had a few, but because the cafeteria felt like a battleground of social hierarchies she had no interest in navigating. The library was quiet, predictable, safe. She'd claim the same corner table by the window, pull out her sandwich and lose herself in whatever book she'd brought that day. Her afternoons were spoken for. While other kids headed to sports practice or hung out at the mall, Maya caught the bus to her mom's small bakery on 5th Street. The place had been in their family for 20 years, and now it was just the two of them keeping it alive. Maya would tie on her apron, help customers refill the display cases, and clean up after closing. By the time they got home each night, she was exhausted. But there was one thing that made it all worthwhile. Tucked in the corner of their small apartment was an old upright piano. The wood was scratched, some of the keys stuck occasionally, and it was desperately out of tune. But to Maya, it was perfect. She'd been playing since she was 6 years old. Her dad had insisted on lessons even when money was tight. He'd pick her up every Tuesday and Thursday and drive her across town to Mrs. Peterson's house. Mrs. Peterson was ancient even then, with hands that shook when she demonstrated the pieces, but she could still play beautifully when she wanted to show Maya something important. After her dad died 2 years ago, Maya thought about quitting. The lessons felt different without him waiting in Mrs. Peterson's living room, flipping through old magazines and pretending not to listen. But her mom had quietly continued paying for them, never once suggesting they stop. So Maya kept going. She practiced late at night after homework, after her mom went to bed. She'd plug in her headphones so the sound wouldn't travel through the thin apartment walls. In those quiet hours, she could be anyone, feel anything. The piano didn't judge her. Didn't care if she was popular or pretty or interesting. It just let her speak in a language that made sense when words didn't. On a Tuesday in October, everything changed. Maya was gathering her books after music class when Mrs. Kim, her music teacher, called her name. Maya froze. Teachers didn't usually single her out. She wasn't a troublemaker, but she also wasn't the kind of student who raised her hand or participated in discussions. She did her work, kept quiet, and blended in. "Can you stay for a minute?" Mrs. Kim asked, her voice gentle but firm. Maya glanced at the clock. If she missed the next bus, she'd be late to the bakery. "But you didn't say no to teachers." She nodded and waited as the other students filed out, their voices fading down the hallway. Mrs. Kim sat on the edge of her desk, arms crossed, studying Maya with an expression that made her nervous. "I want to talk to you about the talent showcase." Maya's stomach dropped. The talent showcase was a school tradition, happening every November. It was a big deal. Packed auditorium, parents attending, even some local news coverage if the acts were good enough. Maya had never gone to watch, let alone considered participating. "I don't perform," Maya said quickly. "I'm not really a performer." "But you're a musician," Mrs. Kim countered. "I've heard you play during class. You sight read better than students who've been playing for twice as long. And last week, when you thought everyone had left, I heard you working through that Chopin piece." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. She'd thought she was alone. She'd been so careful to only play the assigned pieces during class, keeping her real playing private. I was just messing around," Maya mumbled. Mrs. Kim shook her head. "That wasn't messing around. That was real musicianship. You have something special and I think you should share it." "I can't," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't do things like that." "Why not?" It was a simple question, but Maya didn't have a simple answer. How could she explain that the thought of sitting on stage, exposed and vulnerable, made her want to crawl out of her skin? How could she describe the difference between playing in the safety of her apartment and playing in front of hundreds of people who would judge every note? "I just can't," she repeated. Mrs. Kim was quiet for a moment. Then she stood and walked to the piano in the corner of the classroom. She sat down and played a few bars of something Maya didn't recognize, something soft and melancholy. "You know what I love about music?" Mrs. Kim said, still playing. "It's the one language where we're allowed to tell the truth. We spend all day wearing masks, pretending to be fine, saying what we think people want to hear. But music cuts through all that. When you play, you're not invisible. You're more visible than you've ever been, but in the way that actually matters. Maya felt something twist in her chest. She understood exactly what Mrs. Kim meant. That was why she loved playing alone, because she could be completely honest when no one was watching. "Just think about it," Mrs. Kim said, standing up from the piano. "You don't have to decide right now, but I really hope you'll consider it." For the next week, Maya couldn't stop thinking about it. The idea would creep into her mind at random moments. While she was wiping down tables at the bakery, during her boring history class, even when she was trying to fall asleep. Part of her was terrified, but another part, a part she usually kept buried deep, was curious. What would it feel like to play for people? Really play? Not just the safe songs for class assignments, but the pieces that meant something to her. Mrs. Kim didn't push, but she'd catch Maya's eye during music class with a questioning look. By Friday, Maya found herself staying after class again. "Okay," she said before she could change her mind. "I'll do it." Mrs. Kim's face broke into a huge smile. "Really?" "Really?" Maya confirmed, even though her heart was already racing. "But I picked the piece, and if I change my mind, you can back out any time," Mrs. Kim assured her. "What piece are you thinking?" Maya had already decided. There was only one piece that felt right. "Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major." Mrs. Kim nodded slowly. "That's a challenging piece. Beautiful but challenging." "I know," Maya said. "I've been working on it for almost a year." It was the piece she'd been playing the night her dad died. She'd never finished learning it back then, had put it away for months because it hurt too much to play. But 6 months ago, she'd pulled out the sheet music again. This time, every note felt different, heavier, more meaningful. It had become her way of talking to him, of remembering him without falling apart. "Then I think it's perfect," Mrs. Kim said. "We'll put you on the schedule." As Maya left the classroom and headed to catch her bus, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't quite excitement. It wasn't quite terror. It was somewhere in between, a buzzing, electric feeling that made her fingers twitch, already practicing the keys in her mind. She had 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks before she'd have to step out of the shadows and let people see the part of herself she'd kept hidden for so long. 3 weeks before everything would change. The next 3 weeks flew by faster than Maya expected. Every spare moment was spent preparing. She'd practice at home until her fingers ached, then practice some more. The Chopin piece was embedded in her muscle memory now, but she wanted it to be perfect. No, better than perfect. She wanted it to mean something. Mrs. Kim had scheduled a rehearsal the day before the showcase. It was mandatory for all performers, a chance to test the stage, get comfortable with the space, work out any technical issues. Maya wasn't worried about the technical stuff. She was worried about everything else. The morning of the rehearsal, she barely touched her breakfast. Her mom noticed, of course. Moms always notice. "You're going to do great," her mom said, squeezing her shoulder as Maya grabbed her backpack. "Your dad would be so proud of you." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She'd been trying not to think about her dad too much. If she did, she might lose her nerve completely. School dragged on forever. Every class felt like it lasted 3 hours instead of 1. By the time the final bell rang, Maya's stomach was in knots. She made her way to the auditorium where other performers were already gathering. The space was bigger than she remembered. The last time she'd been in here was for a school assembly freshman year. Now standing near the stage, it felt massive. Rows and rows of red velvet seats stretched back into the darkness. The stage itself was elevated, spotlit, impossible to hide on. Maya recognized most of the other performers. There was the dance team already in their matching warm-up gear, stretching and chatting excitedly. The a cappella group was running through scales in the corner. A few solo acts were scattered around, a girl with a guitar, 2 guys with a comedy routine, someone who apparently did magic tricks, and then there was Ryan Chen. Ryan was hard to miss. He was the kind of guy who seemed to take up space just by existing. Tall, confident, always surrounded by friends, he played guitar in a band that performed at local venues, and he had a decent following on social media. Girls loved him. Guys wanted to be him. He was exactly the type of person Maya usually avoided. Right now, Ryan was sitting in the front row with his crew, his guitar case propped against the seat beside him. He was laughing at something on his phone, completely relaxed. Like this was just another Tuesday for him. Maya found a seat in the middle section and tried to make herself small. Mrs. Kim appeared on stage with a clipboard, calling out instructions. One by one, performers took their turns running through their acts. The dance team went first, their routine sharp and synchronized. The a cappella group followed, their harmonies filling the space beautifully. Then it was Ryan's turn. He strolled onto the stage like he owned it, guitar slung over his shoulder. He didn't even seem nervous. He plugged in, adjusted his mic, and launched into an upbeat original song that had everyone nodding along. It was good. Really good. The kind of performance that looked effortless but probably took years to perfect. When he finished, his friends whooped and cheered. Even Mrs. Kim looked impressed. Ryan unplugged and hopped off the stage, high-fiving his way back to his seat. "Maya Rodriguez?" Mrs. Kim called. Maya's legs felt like rubber as she stood. The walk to the stage seemed impossibly long. She was aware of everyone watching her. This girl nobody really knew about to play classical piano of all things. She climbed the steps and crossed to the grand piano positioned center stage. The instrument was beautiful. Black and glossy, probably worth more than her family's car. She sat on the bench and adjusted it, her hands trembling slightly as she positioned them over the keys. The auditorium had gone quiet, that particular kind of quiet that feels loud. She took a breath, ready to begin. That's when she heard it. "Wait, seriously?" Ryan's voice carried from the front row. He wasn't even trying to whisper. "The bakery girl plays piano?" A few people laughed. Maya's hands froze above the keys. "Dude, I didn't even know she was in our grade," one of Ryan's friends added, louder than necessary. "This should be interesting," Ryan continued, and Maya could hear the smirk in his voice. "Bet she plays like someone reading a cookbook." One note at a time, more laughter rippled through the group. Maya felt her face burning. She stared down at the keys, unable to move. Her carefully practiced piece had evaporated from her mind. All she could hear was that laughter echoing in the huge space. "Ryan, that's enough," Mrs. Kim said sharply from the wings. But the damage was done. Maya's vision was blurring. Her breathing had gone shallow. Every eye in the auditorium was on her now, waiting to see what she'd do. Waiting to see if the bakery girl could actually play or if Ryan was right to laugh. She placed her fingers on the keys. Pressed down on the first note. Nothing came out. She'd forgotten to turn on the piano's speaker system. In her flustered state, she hadn't checked the basics. Someone in the back giggled. Maya's hands were shaking now, really shaking. She reached for the power switch, fumbled with it, finally got it on. The silence felt suffocating. She positioned her hands again, took another breath. She could do this. She'd played this piece 1,000 times. She knew every note, every dynamic, every emotion. But her hands wouldn't cooperate. They felt stiff, foreign. She started the opening phrase and immediately hit a wrong note. Then another. The melody that was supposed to flow like water came out choppy and uncertain. She pushed through, trying to recover, but it was like trying to run through quicksand. After maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like an hour, she stopped. Her hands dropped to her lap. The auditorium was completely silent now, but it was a different kind of silence, an uncomfortable one, a pitying one. "It's okay," Mrs. Kim said gently, walking onto the stage. "First rehearsal nerves are totally normal." But Maya was already standing up. "I need to go," she said, her voice barely working. "Maya, wait." She didn't wait. She walked off the stage as quickly as she could without running, grabbed her backpack from her seat, and pushed through the auditorium doors. Behind her, she heard the murmur of voices starting up again. She heard Ryan's laugh, not as loud this time, but still there. The hallway was mercifully empty. Maya kept walking, past the lockers, past the main office, out the front doors, and into the parking lot. She didn't stop until she reached the bus stop 2 blocks away. Only then did she let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Kim, "Please don't give up. Call me when you're ready to talk." Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then turned her phone off. She sat on the bench and waited for the bus, replaying those awful minutes over and over in her head. The laughter, the wrong notes, the looks on everyone's faces. What had she been thinking? She wasn't a performer. She was the girl who hid in the library, who served coffee and croissants, who played piano in the dark with headphones on. She wasn't meant for stages and spotlights and hundreds of eyes watching her every move. By the time Maya got home, she'd made her decision. She'd text Mrs. Kim later, and tell her she was withdrawing from the showcase. It was the sensible thing to do. The safe thing. The smart thing. She walked into the apartment and found her mom in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. "You're home early," her mom said, glancing up with a smile. Then she saw Maya's face. "What happened?" Maya tried to answer, but her throat was too tight. Instead, she just shook her head and walked to her room, closing the door softly behind her. She sat on her bed and stared at the old piano across the room. In the dying afternoon light, it looked smaller than usual, less magical. Just an old piece of furniture taking up space in an already cramped apartment. Maya pulled out her phone and typed out a message to Mrs. Kim. "I can't do the showcase. I'm sorry." Her thumb hovered over the send button for a long time, but she couldn't quite bring herself to press it. Not yet. She set the phone down and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about tomorrow, when everyone at school would know that the bakery girl had choked on stage, trying not to think about Ryan's laughter, trying not to think about anything at all. Maya didn't go to school the next day. She told her mom she felt sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. Her stomach was in knots, and the thought of walking through those hallways made her want to throw up. Her mom gave her a long look but didn't push it. She called Maya in sick and left for the bakery, reminding her to drink water and rest. The apartment felt too quiet. Maya tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself on that stage, heard that laughter, felt those wrong notes under her fingers like physical pain. By noon, she gave up on sleep and wandered into the living room. The piano sat there silent and waiting. She hadn't touched it since before the rehearsal. Hadn't even wanted to look at it. But now, with nothing else to do and nowhere else to go, she found herself sitting on the bench. She didn't play. Just sat there, hands in her lap, staring at the keys. Her phone had been buzzing all morning with messages she wasn't ready to read. Mrs. Kim had called twice. Even a few classmates had texted, probably out of curiosity more than concern. The afternoon dragged on. Around 3, she heard a key in the lock. Her mom came through the door earlier than usual, carrying a white paper bag from the bakery. "I brought you some soup," her mom said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. "And we're going to talk." Maya's shoulders tensed. "Mom, I really don't want to. I know what happened yesterday." Her mom's voice was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Kim called the bakery this morning. She was worried about you, of course she did." Maya felt a fresh wave of embarrassment wash over her. Her mom sat down beside her on the piano bench, the wood creaking slightly under their combined weight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then her mom did something unexpected. She reached over and played a single key, middle C. The note hung in the air between them. "You know why your dad wanted you to learn piano?" her mom asked. Maya shook her head. "They didn't talk about him much. It hurt too much. When he was young, maybe 7 or 8, his family couldn't afford music lessons. But there was a piano in his school's music room, and during lunch he'd sneak in and teach himself. He'd watch the music teacher during class and then try to copy what she did. He wasn't very good." Her mom smiled at the memory. "But he loved it. It was his escape." Maya hadn't known this. Her dad never talked about his childhood much. "When you were born, he made me promise something. He said no matter what, no matter how tight money got, you'd get to learn music properly. Not sneaking around, not teaching yourself from YouTube videos. Real lessons. Because he never got that chance and he wanted you to have it." Maya felt her throat tighten. "He didn't want you to be a professional musician or win competitions. He just wanted you to have something that was yours, something that nobody could take away from you no matter what happened." Her mom paused. "But I think he'd also want you to be brave enough to share it." "I tried," Maya whispered. "I tried and I failed." Everyone laughed. One boy laughed, her mom corrected. One insecure boy who probably can't stand the idea that the quiet girl from the bakery might be more talented than him. Maya wanted to believe that, but the memory was still too raw. Her mom stood up and walked to the small bookshelf where they kept family photos. She pulled out an old album and brought it back to the piano bench. Flipping through the pages, she stopped at a photo Maya had seen 100 times. Her dad, much younger, standing beside a beat-up car with the biggest smile on his face. This was the day he bought his first car, saved for 2 years working night shifts at the factory. He was so proud. Her mom's finger traced the edge of the photo. The next week, someone backed into it in a parking lot. Completely destroyed the front end. Insurance barely covered half the repairs. "I remember you telling me this," Maya said. "Do you remember what he did?" Maya thought for a moment. He got it fixed. He got it fixed, her mom repeated. And he kept driving it for another 10 years. You know what he told me when it happened? He said, bad things don't erase good things. They just make you appreciate the good things more. Maya stared at the photo. Her dad looked so young, so happy. What happened yesterday was bad, her mom continued. It was embarrassing and hurtful, and I wish I could have been there to tell that boy exactly what I think of him. But Maya, it doesn't erase all the hours you've practiced. It doesn't erase how beautiful you play when no one's watching. It doesn't change the fact that you have a gift. A gift nobody wants to hear, Maya said bitterly. Is that true? Her mom closed the album. Or is that just easier to believe than trying again? The question hung in the air. Maya didn't have an answer. That night she finally read her messages. Most were what she expected. A few, "Are you okay?" Texts from classmates who barely knew her. But there was one that surprised her. It was from a girl named Priya who sat 2 rows behind her in English class. Hey, I was at rehearsal yesterday. That guy was such a jerk. For what it's worth, I've heard you play in music class and you're really good. Hope you still perform tomorrow. The showcase was tomorrow night. Maya had almost forgotten. She looked at Mrs. Kim's texts. The first few were concerned, asking if she was okay. The last one, sent just an hour ago, said, your spot is still available if you want it. No pressure? But I believe in you. Maya set her phone down and walked to the piano. She sat on the bench, hands hovering over the keys just like they had that morning. But this time she pressed down, started playing the Chopin piece from the beginning. The first few measures were shaky, uncertain. But as she continued, something shifted. Muscle memory took over. The melody began to flow the way it was supposed to. And Maya realized something. She wasn't playing for an audience. She wasn't playing to prove anything to Ryan or anyone else. She was playing because this was her language. This was how she spoke when words weren't enough. She thought about her dad sneaking into that music room during lunch, learning by himself because he had no other choice. She thought about all the sacrifices her parents had made so she could have real lessons. She thought about every early morning, every late night, every hour spent at this old, out-of-tune piano, and she thought about that moment on stage yesterday. How it had felt like the worst thing in the world, but also how underneath the fear and embarrassment there had been something else, a tiny spark of excitement, the feeling of being seen, really seen, even if it was terrifying. Maya played through the entire piece without stopping. When she finished, she sat in the silence for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and opened the message to Mrs. Kim, deleted the unsent text that said, I can't do the showcase. Instead she typed, I'll be there tomorrow. I'm going to play. She hit send before she could change her mind. Her mom appeared in the doorway, a soft smile on her face. You've been playing for the last hour. I know, Maya said. I needed to remember why I love this. And did you? Maya nodded. Yeah, I did. That night she barely slept. Not from anxiety this time, but from a strange, nervous energy. She kept thinking about the stage, the piano, the piece. But she also thought about her dad. About how he'd never let a setback stop him. About how he'd taught her that brave didn't mean fearless. It just meant doing the thing even when you were scared. At 2 a.m, Maya got out of bed and went to the piano one more time. She played through the piece again, this time with her eyes closed. Every note felt intentional. Every phrase felt true. When she finished, she knew she was ready. Tomorrow, she'd walk onto that stage again. Tomorrow, people might laugh or judge or whisper. But tomorrow, she'd also do something she'd never done before. She'd play her truth in front of the world, regardless of whether they were ready to hear it, and that had to count for something. She went back to bed and finally fell asleep, her fingers still moving through the piece in her dreams, preparing for the moment when everything would change. The day of the showcase felt surreal. Maya moved through her classes in a daze, barely hearing what teachers said, barely noticing the looks from other students. Word had spread about what happened at rehearsal. Some people whispered when she walked by. A few gave her sympathetic looks. Most just ignored her, which was somehow worse. Ryan was everywhere. In the hallway between second and third period. In the cafeteria at lunch. Each time Maya saw him, her stomach twisted. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her existence. He was too busy being the center of attention, laughing with his friends, completely unbothered by what he'd done. Maya spent lunch in the library as usual, but she couldn't focus on her book. Her hands kept trembling. She'd practiced until her fingers hurt, but now she couldn't remember if she'd really prepared enough. What if she messed up again? What if she froze? What if everyone laughed? Not just Ryan's group, but the entire auditorium. At 3 o'clock, the final bell rang. The showcase started at 7, which meant she had 4 hours to completely lose her mind with worry. Mrs. Kim found her at her locker. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Maya admitted. There was no point in lying. "Good," Mrs. Kim said, and Maya looked at her in surprise. "If you weren't scared, it wouldn't matter. Fear means you care. It means what you're about to do is important." Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "I'll see you at 6 for warm-ups," Mrs. Kim said. "And Maya, whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you for showing up." The hours crawled by. Maya went home, tried to eat something, couldn't. She took a shower, hoping it would calm her nerves. It didn't. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. Everything looked wrong. Too fancy, too casual, too attention-grabbing, too forgettable. Finally, she chose the same simple navy dress she'd worn to rehearsal. If she was going to do this, she'd do it as herself. No costuming. No pretending to be someone else. Her mom helped her with her hair, pulling it back into a neat bun. In the mirror, Maya barely recognized herself. She looked older somehow. "More serious, you look beautiful," her mom said softly. "Just like your dad when he was nervous." Same expression. They arrived at school at 5:45. The parking lot was already filling up. Parents, students, families, all streaming toward the auditorium. Maya's hands were ice cold despite the warm evening. Backstage was chaos. Performers were everywhere, running through last-minute practices, adjusting costumes, dealing with technical issues. The dance team was in full makeup. The a cappella group was harmonizing in a corner. Someone's younger sibling was crying because they'd forgotten their props. Maya found a quiet spot near the back and tried to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like Mrs. Kim had taught her. But her chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. At 6:30, Mrs. Kim gathered all the performers for a final briefing. She went over the running order. The dance team would open. Then 2 comedy acts. Then the a cappella group. Then some solo performances. Ryan was scheduled right before intermission, the prime spot when the audience was most warmed up but not yet tired. Maya was scheduled for after intermission, second to last. Mrs. Kim had explained that this was intentional. Give her time to settle in, let the nervous energy of the first half wear off. But now Maya wondered if it just meant more time to panic. At 7 o'clock sharp, the house lights dimmed. Through the crack in the curtain, Maya could see the auditorium. It was packed. Every seat filled, people standing in the back. Her mom was somewhere out there, 5th row on the left side, the seat Maya had insisted she take so they could see each other. The show began. The dance team killed it as expected. The audience loved them. The comedy acts got decent laughs. The a cappella group brought the house down with a mashup of current hits that had everyone clapping along. Then came the solo acts. A girl sang a Whitney Houston song and actually hit the high notes. 2 guys did a magic routine that was more funny than magical, but the crowd enjoyed it. A boy played violin, something classical and melancholy that reminded Maya of her own piece. And then Ryan walked on stage. Even from backstage, Maya could feel the energy shift. People sat up straighter. Girls in the audience screamed. Ryan soaked it in, grinning as he adjusted his guitar strap. He looked completely at home up there, like the stage was exactly where he belonged. He started playing, and Maya had to admit, he was good. Really good. The song was upbeat and catchy, something about summer and freedom and living in the moment. His voice was strong and confident. The audience was eating it up, clapping along, swaying in their seats. Maya watched from the wings, feeling smaller with every passing second. This was what a real performer looked like. Someone who commanded attention. Someone who belonged in the spotlight. What was she doing here? She was a girl who played piano in the dark with headphones on. She wasn't meant for this. Ryan finished to thunderous applause. Standing ovation, whistles and cheers. He took his bows, milking every second before finally walking off stage. As he passed Maya in the wings, their eyes met for just a second. His expression was unreadable. Then he was gone, swept up by his friends. The house lights came up for intermission. Maya had 15 minutes. 15 minutes before her entire world either changed or collapsed. She found a bathroom and locked herself in a stall, trying to calm down. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her breathing was shallow and fast. This was a mistake. She should leave. Slip out the back door. Mrs. Kim would understand. Her mom would understand. No one would blame her for backing out after what happened at rehearsal. She pulled out her phone, ready to text Mrs. Kim. But then she saw the lock screen photo, her and her dad at her first piano recital when she was 7. She was wearing a pink dress and missing 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera. Her dad had his arm around her, looking down at her with so much pride. Maya closed her eyes and let herself remember that day. How scared she'd been. How she'd played a simple Mozart piece just 2 minutes long. How she'd made a mistake in the middle but kept going. How her dad had hugged her afterward and said, "You were perfect. Not because you didn't make mistakes, but because you didn't let the mistake stop you." A knock on the bathroom door made her jump. 5 minutes to places. Someone called. 5 minutes? Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. She looked exactly like what she was. A terrified girl way out of her comfort zone. But she also saw something else. A girl who'd made it this far, who'd come back after failing, who was about to walk onto that stage despite every instinct screaming at her to run. "Okay," she whispered to her reflection. "Okay, you can do this." She walked back to the wings. The house lights were dimming again. The second half was starting. 2 more acts before her, a poetry reading and an original dance solo. Maya barely registered them. She was focused on breathing, on remembering the first notes of her piece, on not passing out. Then she heard it. Our next performer is Maya Rodriguez playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. This was it. No more time to prepare, no more time to think. Just her, the piano, and whatever happened next. Maya stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. She couldn't see individual faces in the audience, just a sea of dark shapes. Somewhere in that darkness was her mom, Mrs. Kim, Ryan and his friends, everyone from school who'd heard about her disaster at rehearsal. She walked to the piano, sat on the bench, adjusted at once the way she always did. Her hands were still shaking as she placed them over the keys. The auditorium was completely silent, waiting, judging, expecting her to fail. Maya closed her eyes. She thought of her dad, of all those hours at this very piano in her apartment, of every reason she loved music in the first place. Then she pressed down on the first key. The first note hung in the air like a question. It was an E-flat, simple and pure. But Maya held it longer than written in the sheet music, let it breathe and settle into the space. In that single note she poured everything, all her fear, all her grief, all her hope. It resonated through the auditorium and something shifted in the silence. People stopped fidgeting. Whispers died. The air itself seemed to hold still. Then came the second note. And the third. The melody began to unfold like a story only music could tell. Maya's hands moved across the keys with a fluidity that surprised even her. All the practice, all those late nights, all those years of lessons, everything came together in this moment. The Chopin piece was technically difficult, full of complex runs and delicate dynamics, but Maya wasn't thinking about technique anymore. She was just feeling. The nocturne spoke of loneliness and beauty, of darkness and small lights that pierced through it. As Maya played, she felt herself drifting back to the night her dad died. She'd been at the piano when her mom came home from the hospital. Her mom hadn't said anything, didn't need to. Maya had seen it in her face. And instead of crying, instead of screaming or breaking down, Maya had sat at this piano and started learning this piece. She'd never finished it then. But she was finishing it now. Her fingers danced through the cascading arpeggios, each note clear and intentional. The melody rose and fell like breathing, like waves, like a heartbeat. In the audience, people were utterly still. Some had tears streaming down their faces without realizing it. Others sat with their mouths slightly open, transfixed. In the 5th row, Maya's mom had both hands pressed to her chest, tears flowing freely. She could hear her husband in this music, could feel him in every note. Backstage, Mrs. Kim stood with her hands clasped together, her own eyes wet. This was why she taught. For moments like this, for students who found their voice and refused to let anyone silence it. And in the front row, Ryan sat frozen. The smirk he'd worn at rehearsal was completely gone. His guitar case sat forgotten at his feet. He'd thought he knew what good music sounded like. He'd thought his performance earlier had been impressive, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't performance. This was truth. Maya reached the middle section of the piece where the melody became more urgent, more questioning. Her whole body moved with the music now, swaying slightly, her shoulders rising and falling with the phrases. She wasn't performing anymore. She was speaking. And everyone in that auditorium understood the language. The piece built toward its emotional peak, a series of climbing chords that felt like reaching for something just out of grasp. Maya played them with such raw emotion that several people in the audience actually gasped. Then came the resolution, the melody settling back into itself, gentler now, accepting. She played the final phrases with impossible delicacy. Each note was softer than the last, fading like a conversation ending, like saying goodbye to someone you love. The last chord hung in the air and Maya let it ring out completely, her hands still on the keys, her eyes closed. Silence. Complete. Total silence. For a moment, Maya thought she'd failed again, that she'd somehow messed up, that people were too shocked to respond. Her eyes opened, her hands lifted from the keys. Then the auditorium exploded. The sound was like a physical force. People leapt to their feet, not just politely standing, but jumping up like they couldn't stay seated another second. The applause was deafening. Whistles, shouts. Some people were clapping so hard their hands had to hurt. Others were still wiping tears from their faces while they applauded. Maya stood slowly, almost in a daze. She'd expected polite clapping. Maybe some appreciation from people who liked classical music. But this was something she'd never imagined. She bowed once, quickly, her face flushed. The applause somehow got louder. Someone in the back shouted, "Bravo!" Others picked it up. "Bravo, bravo!" Maya looked out into the audience and found her mom in the 5th row. Her mom was sobbing and clapping at the same time, and when their eyes met, she mouthed 2 words. "He's proud." Maya felt her own eyes fill with tears. She bowed again and walked off stage on shaky legs. As soon as she was in the wings, Mrs. Kim grabbed her in a tight hug. "That was extraordinary," Mrs. Kim whispered. "That was everything music should be." Maya couldn't speak. She was trembling all over, adrenaline coursing through her body. The applause was still going. Out in the auditorium, people were still on their feet. The stage manager had to actually walk out and gesture for people to sit down so the final act could perform. Maya found a chair backstage and collapsed into it. Other performers came over to congratulate her, their faces genuine with amazement. The girl who'd sung Whitney Houston hugged her. The violin player shook her hand and said it was an honor to follow her performance. Even the dance team captain, who Maya had never spoken to, came over to say she'd never heard anything so beautiful. The final act performed, a group singing a pop song that was perfectly fine, but felt almost anticlimactic after what had just happened. Then came the finale, where all the performers took the stage together for a final bow. Maya stood at the end of the line, still dazed, still processing what had just happened. When the performers were dismissed, Maya walked down the stage steps to find her mom waiting. They hugged without words, both crying, both understanding that this moment was about more than just a piano performance. It was about courage, about not letting fear win, about honoring the people we love by being brave enough to share our gifts with the world. "Your dad was right there with you," her mom whispered. "I felt him." Maya nodded against her mom's shoulder. She'd felt him too. People swarmed around her. Parents of other students, teachers, even strangers who'd come just to watch the showcase. A woman introduced herself as a music professor from the university downtown and handed Maya a business card. "Call me," she said. "We need to talk about your future." Through the crowd, Maya saw Ryan. He was standing off to the side, his friends around him but his attention on her. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Ryan said something to his friends and walked over. Maya tensed, unsure what to expect. "Hey," Ryan said, his voice quiet. Up close, he looked different than he had on stage. Smaller somehow, less confident.
"Can I talk to you for a second?"
Maya glanced at her mom, who nodded and stepped back to give them space. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, and he actually looked like he meant it. "What I said at rehearsal, that was messed up. I was trying to be funny in front of my friends, and I was a jerk." Maya waited. She wasn't going to make this easy for him. "That thing you just did up there," Ryan continued, "I've never heard anything like it. I've been playing guitar for 6 years. And I thought I was pretty good. But what you did, that wasn't just good. That was art, that was real. Thank you, Maya said simply. I mean it, Ryan said. You're incredible. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't. Maya studied him for a moment. She could hold on to the anger. Could make him feel worse. But what would be the point? We're good, she finally said. Just, maybe don't judge people before you hear what they have to say. Whether it's music or anything else. Ryan nodded, looking relieved. Yeah, definitely, and hey, if you ever want to collaborate or something, maybe, Maya said and offered a small smile. Let's see. Later that night, after the auditorium had emptied and the lights had been turned off, Maya and her mom drove home in comfortable silence. When they walked into their apartment, Maya went straight to the piano. Not to practice, just to sit beside it and rest her hand on the wood. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Kim. You changed something in people tonight. That's the power of honest art. Never forget what you did. Maya smiled and set her phone down. She thought about how scared she'd been just a few hours ago. How close she'd come to giving up. How easy it would have been to let Ryan's laughter define her, to let one bad rehearsal convince her she wasn't meant for this. But she'd chosen differently. She'd chosen to be brave. And in doing so, she'd discovered something important. Being invisible was safe, but being seen, really seen for who you truly are, that was where the magic lived. She played one more time that night. Just the opening phrase of the nocturne, soft and gentle, a thank you to the piano that had carried her through the hardest years of her life, a promise to herself that she'd keep playing, keep growing, keep sharing her voice with the world, because some stories can only be told in music. And Maya finally understood that hers was worth hearing.